When the name corpse paint came about.
For me, it's just like an electric jolt.
The real ugly side of humanity, and their music sounds like it.
I always wanted to be a band that was approachable to people, that was just regular-ass people.
Yo, what's up? So before I start this episode, I want to bring up two really good friends of mine that I've met along the way. They've been the backbone and really the biggest supporters of this podcast since day one. Everything visually you see with this podcast has been done by Wither Designs and Benny Bones Art, and it could be your band next. Check them out on social media, get yourself something unique and original, and yeah, let's do this. You started playing instruments when you were 8. What were those in specific? Like, was it guitar? Was it, vocal through school?
Yeah, I started playing drums first in third grade. Yeah, I think I was 8. My dad taught me how to play the basics of the drum kit. He bought one. He was a drummer when he was younger. Bought one for the family and taught me drums. And then a couple years later, I started learning guitar from my brothers. I also took lessons for both of these instruments after I learned the basics from my family. But those were the first two things. I consider myself a drummer first and foremost, and I use guitar as a tool for writing songs. I'm not an amazing guitarist, but after guitar, I learned bass, and I guess I've been vocalizing kind of the whole time, but I didn't have any training for my voice.
So I'm assuming, if I were to go back, like I'm a guitar player, if I were to go back, I would be a drummer, just specifically for the fact of anything in music is based off of the beat, right? And, did you have any training through school with that? Because, that is what builds a band. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, I did have some training through school. I did what was called band. I was a percussionist. I played the snare drum, the bass drum, the marimba,
the
and
gong.
xylophone. Sometimes the gong. You got it. But that was still later for me. It first just started with just natural rhythm and my dad encouraging that and learning from my dad, and then taking trap kit lessons at the local music shop. And then
okay. Cool.
I wanted to join band, and they made me wait because I was already trained and everyone else wasn't. So I had to start band a little bit later and in a more advanced sense because I already had knowledge of my instrument. It was elementary school, like people had never touched an instrument before. But yeah, I did do band for a couple of years through school.
So do you think that, so say you started on guitar, do you think that your project would be as proficient as it is today? Because like I said, the drums are the backbone of what it is. Do you think that by getting an outside drummer, you would have as many releases as you have right now?
That's an interesting question. Probably not. I agree with you that drums are crucial, and I also think that it's one of the harder positions to fill. Not as many people play drums as guitar.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, so I think that it would be a decent stick in the spokes of my project being a one-man project if I didn't play drums myself. I would probably then be either trying to learn them as I go, or finding a session drummer to play with, or even just having a band as opposed to a solo project. It probably would be a lot different.
So, to me, drummers can make or break a band. For example, death metal. The riffs are sometimes like Obituary. They are a very straightforward, slow riff band, but their drummer is freaking nuts. off of that is like, do you try to go for the more complex, or you just kind of go with the flow that like fits with the song? Like, what is your approach to drums? Like, yeah,
Definitely more the latter, going with the flow. Um, I my path to metal came through um, classic rock getting heavier and heavier till I was listening to Black Sabbath, till I was listening to Electric Wizard, till I was listening to Burning Witch. So doom metal was first for me, and then I developed a liking for black metal and some of the faster, more extreme sounds. So I'm more of a slow guy.
right,
And what I appreciate about slow music that I find lacking in a lot of faster music is, for lack of a better term, soul.
yeah,
And I feel like when I'm playing slow music, there's just more space for me to improvise fills and kind of feel the beat more than this sort of like all out sprint of complexity and speed that is a lot of faster music. So I definitely prefer to feel the beat more slowly and kind of find these little in the pocket places to put a soulful fill and kind of emote through the drum performance. I mean, fast music's great too, but I find it lacking personality sometimes, and it's harder to do. At least for me, I'm not a great fast drummer. It's harder for me to do uh, varying fills then just continue on the sort of fast thing
yeah.
of, and then your hands go like I like having more room to break up the rhythm in different ways, and I find that more natural at slower tempos.
So, in music, it said that you seek to be honest and vulnerable. Uh, Lots of credit to you for that because um, I don't do vocals, I don't do lyrics. I'm a guitar player, so I don't have like a message, right? But do you feel that this has been one of the main reasons why some of your art is like unheard or unpublished? Like I saw a lot of stuff that basically said that like once in a while you'd be like, I'm just gonna keep it in my pocket, like let's just keep that one to the side.
um I think that was how I felt when I first started the project. The first album that I made, I released in 2012. I actually had no intent of releasing, and didn't know. Mizmor wasn't a thing yet. Didn't know what the identity of what I was doing was. I just made this really personal, cathartic metal record because I needed to. I had a lot of emotion to get out. Um, but ever since then, I've gotten so much positive feedback from people that seemed to have a certain need for this kind of thing that was helpful to them, that I've been releasing, I mean, pretty much everything that I've made. Uh, I guess made, I've created with the intention of releasing pretty much everything I've made since that point.
So yeah, the biggest thing that I saw was like you had on the first release you had a collector like reach out to you and be like, hey man, I want a physical copy, and you're like, I don't
Yeah,
have a
that's right.
copy. Like I read that and I just thought it was like so funny, but at the same time like awesome that you're like, you know what, I'm gonna make you a copy. Like think
Yeah.
yeah, like thinking back to that moment was just think back to that moment, like how did you approach that situation? Like were you like, you know what, like how do I even do this?
Yes. It wasn't an immediate like, oh, I'm going to make this person a CD because they asked for it. It was like, wait, what? This this random person from Greece, of all places, found my music and contacted me and needs a physical copy. Like, it took me a while to wrap my head around. I I kind of knew a little bit of the DIY ethos in the metal culture from working with Hell previously, but I was coming out of an intense kind of sequestered religious experience, so I was also pretty removed from any sort of scene. So, this was my first real learning experience of like how hardcore the physical merch element of the DIY metal scene is.
Yes.
And it was a pivotal moment for me for sure, because I might not have ever released that album if not, I mean, in a physical sense, if not for that. I released it digitally before, but also because a friend was like, hey man, like, you put so much work into this, you're not even going to put it on the internet for people to stumble across. Like, you're really just going to sit on this? I was like, okay, I made a Bandcamp. I'll put it on Bandcamp, whatever. So that was, another example with the CD of like, hey, you're not going to like make a thing out of this. I really want one. So finding that encouragement was, yeah, definitely pivotal for me. And even at that moment, I made one for that guy and sent it to him in Greece. And I think I made 10. I wanted to keep one. I gave one to a couple friends, whatever. It was like, cool, I'll make 10. It wasn't like, oh, great, looks like people love my music, I'll make a couple hundred of these now. It was like bit by bit. And then after 10 were gone, I made 10 more. And then I think finally I got to the point where I was like, I'll make 50 and that'll be it. I think there was like 73 or 74 CDs that I made in total, but it wasn't even like there was an edition that I set out to make. At first, it was just literally one at a time for people if they wanted it.
Yeah, I think that's like the coolest thing, because a lot of bands, like for me, the first album that I did, I think I printed 100, and like I was so disappointed at the time when I was like, all right, I didn't sell like 15, 20. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like for you, those 1 or 2 sales meant a lot more to you, not looking at a pile of 100 or 200 on your first release. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I didn't even think about it as a release. It was just like, oh, these people want to be a part of my sonic journal that I just made. That's kind of cool.
Right. And I just feel like even 2 means a lot, because like you're like, I didn't even prepare for this.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
So, when we're talking about releasing a record and writing a record, being in the studio, with pushing yourself constantly to make a better sounding record, what have you learned about yourself the most in this process? Like for me, I'm a very nitpicky person, man. I'll sit and I'm a one-man thing band too. I just kind of sit and write and hope for the best.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good question. What have I learned about myself? I've learned that I have a lot to learn constantly, and that there's no like destination or point of arrival, that you're just constantly challenging yourself and I want to say improving, but also just changing, evolving. And I've learned that I always have music to make, even if there's long pauses in between albums or a sense of finality when I make an album. There's gonna be more.
There's never a finish line, man.
Yeah. Yeah. In terms of fidelity or quality and just artistic message. There's always another chapter, and I want to remain open to that, no matter what that means. Yeah. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you definitely did. Like for me, I don't think that I'll ever be happy. Like the one thing that I read about you, that it basically said that you want to look at a record 10 years later and you don't want to be like, I wish I did this better. Like kind of like your end goal is like you just want to appreciate it and say that this was a thing and it sounds good.
That's right. And I still live by that goal. I think it's a good goal for two reasons. I think that you should approach art with that kind of standard of like, well, think about how this is going to age. How are you going to feel about it in 10 years? Let's try to make something that you're not going to cringe at, something that holds up. Right. And I think that is a good challenge that has made me create better and better art. But I also think that it's a little bit of an impossibility. Like you're always going to listen to something in 10 years and go, yeah, I would have done this differently. And you should, because you're improving and changing. Like you shouldn't make a record that, 10 years later, you can't do better than. It should be kind of impossible, but it's a good way to push yourself to try to, meet this precedence of quality, even though the goalpost is always moving.
So I think the biggest thing for you is like, if you have 5 people in a band, you could go, that was Bob's riff. I didn't like that. Bob did it. But it's all eyes on you. Like you think back and it's like, I did all of that. The reason why I don't like it is because of me. You know what I mean? Mm. Being in a band, I feel like you could have shame, but not as much.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, the responsibility is spread out. That's for sure. Collaborating in a band is cool. But it would just not be Mizmor. It's just like intrinsically needs to be me doing everything. I've been in plenty of bands, and that's just a different experience, for better or
without
for worse.
A doubt.
Yeah.
I think like the thing that I wanted to ask you was like, so say that you didn't play drums, right? And you had a drummer come in. Do you think like the genuineness of your project would be, not, I don't know, just kind of lost?
Yeah.
Because it's not as personal.
Yeah.
Not as personal. Like your songs are extremely long. They're like 13 minutes, 28 minutes.
Yeah.
It's like a story. It's like a story, man.
That's right. Yeah. I do think it would be different. I don't know if it would all be compromised. I think there's people do it. People that don't play drums but want to be in charge of everything else to tell their story. But it would be different. And I think it would lose some of the urgency and sincerity. Yeah, like even I have a friend that just started a one-man black metal project, and he plays a little bit of drums, but he's definitely a guitar player. Mm-hmm. And I continue to encourage him to press into the drums and to just figure out a way to learn it and to do it himself, because especially for like your first record in this genre, some of the lo-fi stuff, some of the flubs, they're almost endearing. I mean, they can't be too crazy, but right. when the humanity, yeah, right. When the humanity peeks through, I mean, I love moments on records where that happens, where you're like, oh man, that wasn't totally tight. And then you listen to it over and over again, and you kind of start to love it. I think that is maybe unique to this subgenre,
Right.
or
Yeah,
to
that is true.
extreme metal. But
100%.
like, yeah, it's okay if it like sounds kind of ugly. I would rather, the person accomplish doing everything themselves and then refine that than to like outsource all the things that you can't do yourself and make it sound perfect, but maybe a little bit more sterile. Yeah, I don't know. I
Right.
mean, there's good ways to do it, both in both camps. But for me, you're right. It would be different if I didn't play everything. How much different is hard to say.
So I think that's why I'm starting to like live albums more, because like, you know, a lot of bands nowadays, black metal is kind of different. It's just different because, like you said, they like to, hone in on those mistakes. They leave them in there. But live records really show like what the band is gonna be. And
Hmm.
I feel like a lot of the bands that skip over the mistakes, you see them live and they're a whole different band, you know?
Right.
So when I was listening to your live record, like it kind of like blended right in.
Yeah. Well, thanks. We worked really, really hard on that set, and I'm so incredibly proud of it. My closest friends that make up the live band have given me so much of their time to try to play their instruments somewhat like me, and help the vision come across in a live sense. It was important to me to have a live band as opposed to have me up there doing one of the instruments and vocals with backing tracks. I
Yeah.
don't feel like that's as interesting to watch. Um, so, but I also don't want to have just anyone playing with me, just hired hands helping me out. So
Right. They have to
the
know what was going into the effort. I totally think that having like your best friends a part of it would be a good idea.
Yeah, it's worked out so well in so many ways. I mean, emotionally, it's been great, and sonically, it's been great because not only are these some of my best friends, but they're people that I've played music with for most of my life. So we already kind of just speak the same musical language. There's
Right.
less that I have to explain, and more that's just intuitive to them already. And I couldn't have a better situation for that.
Right. I feel like sometimes musicians, like for me, man, it took me I think 3 or 4 years to like kind of, how do I put it? Like with drummers, it takes a long time to just be in sync with each other, right?
Yeah.
And for you, you release a record and you're like, I want to play a show. Like you can't be waiting around for 4 years to get the flow going.
Yeah.
So, all right. So you use music as a necessary source of release and melancholy. Do you have any other personal hobbies that have the same effect? Like for me, like I read a lot.
I do have some personal hobbies, but not that have the same effect. No, this is kind of the one thing that is this therapeutic for me, and this effective for processing my thoughts and emotions, which lead me to acceptance and growth. That reflection, uh, I do it through the music. I do read a lot, and not a lot. I read, and often what I'm reading inspires what I'm what I'm going through, or vice versa, I'll seek out reading material based on what I need help processing. It definitely fuels some of the content. I love listening to other music, watching movies, playing video games, and all of those are kind of storytelling that do satisfy some sort of itch for me. But ultimately, there's nothing quite like being the storyteller to satisfy what I'm trying to get out.
So you've gotten to hear, this is the last one, you've gotten to hear how your projects have helped fans battle similar struggles with faith and religion. Um, what's maybe like the most impactful message or, note you've gotten, and would you like to share about it?
Yeah, there's not a specific one that's coming to mind right now, but I most appreciate the in-person chats that I've been able to have uh, at live shows, at the merch table, or just at the bar or whatever. I've talked to ex-Christians, ex-Jehovah Witnesses, ex-Mormons, etc., and I just feel so much solidarity with people that have felt traumatized by their religion and left. I feel like, especially as we get older and further into adulthood, it's really, really hard to change your mind about something.
Right.
And
Totally.
something as huge as a worldview, I mean, you can walk up to the edge of that and look over the edge and want to change your mind and still not be able to because it's too scary. I think that it's just so huge to meet other people that have turned their world on its head and walked away from not only their religion, which can mean their family and friends and support systems, but even just the ontological level of being willing to change your mind given new evidence. That's what I'm most interested in and most fascinated by. So those folks that have talked to me at shows, it's really impacted me. I've gotten, plenty of emails from folks as well. And just knowing that there's more people out there that can relate to this, and that it's a much bigger issue than even just Christianity. I love having those conversations with people, and I feel a kinship with them. And I think it's all part of this bigger story that is kind of trying to disarm dogma and magical thinking and accepting things by faith and trying to empower the scientific method and reason and logic and changing your mind given the evidence as opposed to buckling down in the face of it.
Right. And it's just so hard. Like for me, I grew up kind of in the same realm of what you were going through. Like you got brought up into Christianity and Catholic and blah blah blah. And I used to go to church all the time, but like I'm 22, right? And like I see that like your story was kind of similar to mine, where I'm like, I don't really know or believe everything I hear. So it's cool that hearing your story and I get to listen to the music is awesome because we share like the same beliefs. So I just give you gratitude for releasing your music.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. That's what it's all about.